In today's video, I am going to be going over another important part of Google Script, arrays. Arrays are a very powerful tool when programming that allow you to store multiple values in one variable. To start, let's declare an empty array. You create an array using these square brackets. They're located next to the P key on the same key that you used for the curly brackets, except this time you don't hold Shift to get them. Now let's take a look at what this list looks like. If it will ever load, that is to say. So as you can see, we just get these empty brackets because there is currently nothing stored in the array. So this is not very helpful, but you can also put values inside of an array. So to put something in an array, you just put it inside the brackets with commas separating each item. There we go. So as you can see, it stored all the items there. However, instead of just being able to start with a list like this, an array like this, one of the more useful tools it has is the ability to add to an existing array. So you use the push function belonging to an array to add something to the end of the list, which we'll see in a second. We're going to console.log it again. And as you can see, it appended this something else to the end of the array. Now that you know how to put items into a list, you need to know how to access those items. So we use accessor notation for this. So I'm going to do this. So this should log the 1th item of the list. Use the same square brackets used to create the list here. So this is meaning this is what's known as accessor notation, and it's how you get, so this gets the element in list at the first index. But we're going to see something a little bit strange here. Notice how it says that string example is what is located at index 1 of the list, even though we can clearly see for ourselves that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 items, and the second one is string example, not the first. That is because accessor notation counts how many elements. Okay, let me see if I can say this correctly. Array indices start at index 0. So instead of counting them 1, 2, 3, 4, the computer counts them 0, 1, 2, 3, because it's not counting what number item on the list it's on, but how many items past the first item it is. 3.14 is the first item of the list, and there's nothing between it and the start of the list, so it is at index 0. String example, however, is one item over from the start of the array, which is why the computer says that this is what is located at index 1. The reasoning behind indexes starting at 0 is beyond the scope of this course, or camp, or whatever it is we're calling it now, but just know that this is not how you get the first item of the list. It is like so. that properly gives us 3.14 as the 0th or first item in the array. Now the next thing that you can do with arrays is count how many items are in them. So in this case, we get the number of items contained in list by using the list.length. So this means the length property belonging to the list. Notice how there are not parentheses after list. That is because, there are no parentheses after length. That is because the length is not a function belonging to list, but a property or attribute belonging to it. The length tells us how many items are in the list. Which we should see in a second here. And it doesn't show up yet. Or does it? There it is. So 1, 2, 3, 4 contains 4 items, so that is correct. So this is very useful for iterating over a list, which is something that sorry, not a list, I keep calling them lists, an array. So iterating over an array is a very useful skill to have, and you will be using it a lot if you're doing anything with programming. So I'm going to use the for loop I introduced in my last video to do so. So first we're going to start with the beginning of the basic structure of the for loop. Now we're going to start at the first item in the list, which is at index 0. So I'm going to say let index equal 0 as the starting condition for the loop. And the last condition of the loop is, so this next condition is what? Once this condition becomes false, it's going to exit out of the loop. So I'm going to say once index, so continue this so long as index is less than the list.length. And I'll show why in a minute. And I'm going to say index plus plus plus. So this is so every time, so let me finish this up first before I go over what it's going to do. So what this is going to do, let me see here. So it's going to enter this for loop here and go, okay, beginning of the loop, set index to 0. Is index less than list.length, which we saw was 4? Yes, then continue. Then it console.logs this, giving us the 0th item in the list. Then it goes to this and increases index to 1. It repeats that with is 1 greater than 4? No. Yeah, it's 4 greater than 1, sorry. Is 4 greater than 1? Yes. Then we keep continuing until we get to index 3, at which point it goes index plus plus to 4. Is 4 less than 4? No, it is equal to 4. So then it breaks out and goes down here. Let's make sure this works. For some reason it didn't log everything. Let me reload here. The logging in Google Script seems pretty unreliable. Okay, yeah, I did something wrong here. Let's see, so we're only incrementing the index once. Oh, I completely forgot to mention this in one of my videos. So so index plus plus is the exact same thing as saying index equals index plus 1. So you can write it that way. I'm just so used to writing the plus plus. And for some reason, this is not giving us everything. Oh, okay, so for some reason it was just bugging out. So the value at index 0 of this here is 3.14, which we can see here. At index 1 should be string example, yes. At index 2 we have 0, 1, 2, so it should say true. And at index 3, which is the last one, it says something else. So that all worked. So, but what would happen? So let me show one last thing here before we go on. So so notice how we stopped it and did not get, so the list.length was equal to 4, but we didn't grab the item at the 4th index. Why is that? So I will show why. So we take the list and grab the item at its length index. I'm not quite sure how you would say that. And you would assume that this would give you the last item in the list, wouldn't it? However, that is not correct. There we go. It says undefined. So most programming languages would hate you if you were to do this. They will say that the list index is out of bounds. So if you see you're using any other programming language, they would whine about this. Google Script is perfectly fine with that. It just tells you it's undefined, which that's not something that we want. But in order to grab the very last item of the list, you need to subtract 1 from that index. Notice how I'm putting it inside the square brackets. Since we're trying to grab something at the list.length minus 1th index, which should give us the last one, which I believe is something else. Yep, so it properly gives us the last item. So one of the last things I'm going to cover in this video is an array of arrays, which, I didn't show it here, but, so arrays can hold any value that a variable can hold, such as numbers, strings, and booleans, but they can also contain arrays, just like variables, so you can have an array of arrays. So there's a special name for an array of arrays called, it is sometimes called a two-dimensional array. One example of where you might use a two-dimensional array is to store spreadsheet data, which, let's see, we might cover that in a later video of a different series. So I've used this tic-tac-toe variable to hold a 2D array containing X's, O's, and empty spaces, and I am logging it to the console. But as you can see, it doesn't really look all that pleasant. So let's go over how to iterate over a two-dimensional array. So this is something you will do quite a bit in your programming adventures, so it's another one of those things that you don't particularly have to understand how it works. It's just something that you're going to use so frequently it's going to be ingrained in your brain forever. So let's start with another for loop. Row num equals 0. So we're going to start at row number 0, because whenever you're iterating over a two-dimensional array, it's going to go row first, so it's going to iterate over rows first, which I'll kind of show you in a minute here. So let row num equal 0. Now the condition for going through this loop is going to be the row num has to be less than tick tac toe dot length and row num plus plus, or you can use the plus equals 1 or equals row num plus 1, and I'm going to console.log tick tac toe row num. And I'm just going to clean up all of this stuff from here just so the output doesn't get too cluttered. Okay, good, I didn't delete anything necessary for once. So as we can see, this looks much nicer here. So that's how we would iterate over it as a one-dimensional array. So we're starting at row number 0, and because of the way I've organized it here, so this array here, these square brackets mark the beginning and end of tic-tac-toe. This is element 0, then you see the comma. So the next thing is element 1, so you see the comma, and the next thing is element number 2, rather at index number 2. Tic-tac-toe.length is 3, because it's 1, 2, 3 rows here. I should have highlighted it like so. And so it's going to go row num 0. Is that less than 3? Yes, continue. Do this. Increment row num by 1 so that it becomes 1. Go through. This is 1 less than 3. Yes, then you console.log the row number, the tic-tac-toe 1, then you go here, increase that 1 to a 2, you check is 2 less than 3, yes, so you console.log tic-tac-toe at index 2, which is this one. Then it goes here and increases the row number by 1 to 3, and then it asks, is 3 less than 3? No, it is not, so go out of it. So what we're going to do then is let's say for example you don't want to iterate over the array like this. So there's a reason I made this a two-dimensional array, is so that we could iterate over the individual cells. So I'm just going to comment this out, and now I'm going to iterate over the columns in this in the current row. So to do that, I'm going to do for let col num equal 0, then the semicolon. Col num is less than, so what do we put here? So we want to iterate over each column in each row as we go over them. So how do we find the length of the current column? So the current column we're going to be iterating over is, sorry, not current column, current row we're iterating over is tic-tac-toe row num. Dot length. So when row num is equal to 0, tic-tac-toe row num is equal to this, which is an array. So we can call the length property of that array. Now something to notice here is that this for loop here is inside of this for loop here. This is what is known as a nested loop. So I'm going to do something really quick here. Oops, I did that one wrong. Okay. And it may take it a minute to load, of course. There we go, it's probably not loaded. So it goes row 0, column 0. Okay, nope, it didn't log correctly again. Give me a second here. I really do not get what is up with these logs. So it goes 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2. Okay, you can see the rest for yourself. So notice something about this is it goes through all of the columns 3 times. That is because this loop is inside of this loop. So for every iteration of this outer loop, this entire loop will run. So since this is iterating 3 times, this entire thing will run 3 times. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. So now we want to access the the item at this row and this column, which we do like so. So first, let's get the row. So when row num is 0, that will give us the 0th row, which is this one here. So this so far evaluates to an array. So then we can grab since this this is the 2-dimensional array. This gets us a 1-dimensional array. So we can grab this index of that array to get the value inside the array. So let's see what that looks like here. It probably will be incorrect, but let's see. Apparently Google Script is being rather temperamental now. I'll have to reload twice. Row 0, column 0 is X. Row 0, column 1 is O. Did I do that right? So row 0, column 1 is O. That is correct. Row 0, column 2 is just blank. Row 0, column 2, yes. And it's correct for everything else. So this nested loop is a very nice thing to have. It's necessary when working with 2-dimensional arrays, and you'll be using it quite a bit. Once again, you don't particularly have to understand what exactly it's doing, but as I said, you're gonna memorize this general structure surprisingly fast. So I hope this video has kind of given you an idea of, oh wait, let me double check something really quick here, make sure I don't have anything else I need to cover. And that looks like that's it. So arrays are very complicated and you can do lots of very powerful things with them, so as such I wasn't able to cover everything you can do with them in this video. I was just highlighting some of the most important parts that I thought would be important to some of the future content in this camp. So yeah, this video did turn out quite long, but as you can see, arrays are very powerful, but a little bit confusing at the same time. So yeah, that is it for this video. I probably will eventually do a follow-up to this, just to cover more array functionality, but as for that, that is it for this video.